This meeting is being recorded.
All right, fantastic. Well, welcome everyone to the Sooner, Safer, Happier Pacific meetup. It is 5 p.m. here in Melbourne, so it is the end of our day. I think we've got some international guests joining us today, so it's a whole bunch of different times in various time zones today. But my name is Marie Muir. Happy to be here today. I am an enterprise agility, what I like to think as a bit of a pioneer here in Australia. I've been working with a variety of leaders, teams, organizations since about 2010 on their ways of working journey. So I've learned a lot of what not to do and of what to do based on that. And I'm part of the Sooner, Safer, Happier team here, driving out the movement to help organizations achieve better outcomes and really for the pursuit of a more humane world of work. So today we are here because we are fascinated with the topic of value streams. I will say that we are in the age of digital, so that means that we are all working in complex, unique, emergent change. This is not about cookie cutter, repeatable things anymore. So this is all about the shift from project to product, from output to outcome. And if we're really going to make these shifts, we really need to figure out how we're going to do that. And part of that is using the pattern of value streams. So to help maybe give a little bit of context, I will share this one pager for you all. And so basically, a value stream is a pattern for you to think about how to organize for outcomes, how to organize your people, how to organize the work, how work flows, and really underlying all of that is then how you really need to behave. So a value stream is a term that's been founded in Lean, and it's really all about flow. So whether that's flow of information, flow of value, and so the things that you'll see kind of highlighted on this picture, it's all about long-lived teams, aligned to customers and the flow of value.
Can't hear you. I'm in a meeting.
And it's about lean budgeting. It's about you build it. If you build it, you run it. It's about fast time to decision, high alignment, high autonomy. Those are kind of some of the key points of what it is that we're talking about. But I will say before we get into it that this is a pattern. This is not a one-size-fits-all playbook. This is about taking this and then applying to fit your context. So I hope that is enough to put us all a little bit on the same frame. Now, we are going to run today's meetup with a bit of a panel. So let me introduce who we've got here with us today. We've got Brodie McDonald. So you'll see her up at the top left. Brodie is our value stream leader. So Brodie comes from Auckland Savings Bank, where the bank itself has moved to a value stream model across the enterprise. So Brodie's had two roles. She was the value stream leader of what I like to call the Ways of Working Center of Enablement, but what you called it was the PACE operating model. And now in the last handful of months, Brodie is a tribe lead of the Wealth and Remediation team. So Brodie will bring all things leadership to our conversation. So welcome to you, Brodie.
Oh, thanks, Ray. Lovely intro.
Next, thanks, Brodie. Next, we've got Mark Payne down at the bottom of the screen. So Mark is our value stream designer and implementer. So Mark and I met each other a handful of years ago when he was the executive manager of enterprise agility at Bank West. Mark was instrumental in the agility transformation that they had there. Where they had some awesome outcomes and goals. Mark can tell us about what those are. And since then, he's co-designed and implemented agility and value streams at a handful of other organizations too. So welcome our designer, Mark.
Thank you, Maria, and looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. And then last at the top right, we've got BMK, who is our value stream architect. And BMK has had 25 years of experience working with in technology and really using value streams to enable tech and product digital teams to improve flow. He's very active in the DevOps community in New Zealand. He was just telling me about a conference that he was running just the other day. And his last role was implementing value streams at the Bank of New Zealand. So welcome, BMK.
Good to be here. Thanks so much, Maria. I try to live up to the expectation now.
Well, we are just here to learn from each other ultimately. So that is the only expectation. So thank you. Awesome. So now we've got 77, if I can see, of you. And you've all got expertise and insights as well. So I'm going to start off with understanding kind of who do we have in the room, in our virtual room today. So I've just kicked off a poll with 4 questions. If I can get everyone to kindly answer those. Has that come up for everybody? Yep, great. Thanks, Brody. All right, we've got roughly half of everyone's answered, a little bit more than half. Awesome. I'll take 75% as a good, 80% as a good response, right? I think there's even still some more coming through. All right, so it looks like, and I'll end the poll in a sec just to give everyone a few last moments to fill it in, but it looks like we've got a mix of, I've been using kind of value streams in practice. They understand the concept, and that's probably our majority. In terms of how the current organization is structured, I'm sad to report that half of you are still working in functional silos, so we'll talk about that. And then we've got 30% in Spotify inspired structures like tribes, squads, and chapters. And then in terms of the benefits of value streams, it is mostly all of what I expected, which was time to value, customer focus, flow efficiency, better quality, happier teams, improved safety. And I'm pleased to say that no one thought that cost cutting, or very few of you thought that that was a good one. So well done. That was a bit of a trick question I had in there for you. And then lastly, in terms of the challenges, it is focused in on leadership support and buy-in, culture and mindset being the main ones. So I'll close the poll now. I've shared the results with you. So just heads up panel team. Those are, that's who we've got in the room. So now that we've had a really good opportunity to get to know each other, what we're going to talk about, how are we now going to work together? So we've got roughly 50 minutes left to have a free-flowing conversation with all of us. So what we are going to talk about is the problem statement that we're looking to solve for. So in the context of organizing the people, organizing the work. What is a value stream? What does the design look like? What are some considerations in terms of setting that up? Number 3 will be, what does it mean to live and breathe and work within a value stream? What does that actually mean practically day to day? And then lastly, it's for the 50-odd% of you, it's who are still living in functional silos. It's then how do you then get started? We'll be talking about enabling that change. So with that set up, we will be taking questions as we go. So Stephen, my fellow community member, will be helping to moderate that. I'll keep a bit of an eye on it as well. I can see the chat's already going and I've not been paying attention, so I'm going to need Stephen to help out. So let's get into it. So I think let's start then with why should we care about organizing the people, organizing the work? Like what is the problem statement here? Why are we talking? Why are we talking about this? And Brody, I might throw over to you to kick it off for us first.
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting because I think even when you look at the answers that this group put up, there's lots of different reasons why you might start. If I think about kind of our context and where we are in ASB, our reason really is to connect closer to customers and to kind of get that flow happening across the system. So, you know, we've been working now, as Maria said, for nearly 4 years, and kind of this model. We've brought together the different component parts, and I can see some of the other fellow Kiwis on the line as well who will be familiar. And really for us, it's about trying to make sure that we've got everything that we need in one place to be able to align to organizational strategy, which is really about getting you know, products, services, experiences out the door to customers sooner, better, and safer.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Brody. So it was customer, really bringing the heart of the customer, in for you. Awesome. Mark, what about from your experience, your context? What problems were you trying to solve for?
Yeah, if I go back, I think it's about 5 or 6 years now when we started the Bankwest journey. Really pleasing to say that journey started with actually ELT at the top, recognising the shift that was happening from a customer perspective. But not only from a customer perspective, but the technology perspective. And they were fundamentally trying to answer the question at the time: did they want to be doing more digital work, or did they want to become more of a digital organisation? And depending on how you answer that question, kind of took you down, you know, a few parts. But they opted down, we want to be more of a digital organisation, and so that allowed them to then start to investigate and having a look at other organisations that weren't set up traditionally. And so that then led us down the path of how we would set up the tribes, the platforms, the chapters and structures. So it was led by the customer, but ultimately tied to the commercial outcomes for the organisation. And when you can bring those two things together in terms of the value stream concept, it enables that flow, that efficiency, that speed to market, cost to value improvements. And even just the other organisations I'm working with at the moment, very, very similar concepts. But Suncorp, who I'm currently working with at the moment here in Australia, their focus is really around optimising delivery, those handoffs in delivery, those break points, that divide between the business and IT. These value streams really break down those traditional silos in those regards.
Yeah, awesome. So I think you've got a customer flavor as well, but then a delivery one, so flow efficiency. And I've seen, so in my experience, I've seen the handoffs between departments being one of the main things that we're trying to fix or resolve for as well, because it just creates wait time. So yeah, nice one. Thanks, Mark. And BMK, from your perspective, so value streams, what was the problem? What was the context? What were you trying to solve for?
I think the value stream adoption in enterprise shows the commitment to optimize the organization for the flow of customer value, flow of customer value delivery. I think given the space where we are at the moment, the agility becomes an important aspect for an organization. So if you want to regroup and reorganize yourself into a way to deliver the value sooner, safer, happier, as our fundamental principles. And I think you can innovate constantly, and you can execute quickly, and also you know how to measure the metrics around that. Like, because you need a constant way of measuring how you're improving the flow. Because a lot of organizations, they focus on optimizing just on the cost perspective, on certain silo perspective. But what we need to look at from is actually value stream gives you the holistic view of system thinking and end-to-end view for you and for your organization. And that's what value stream is, helping us and giving the context for us.
Yeah, I really like that, because what you're highlighting there is how to think of the organization as a product or a service that you need to be optimizing for and thinking of as well. So it's how do you how do you make the engine, so to speak, better to then be able to deliver? And it's about that flow. Yeah. So what, so if we then talk about like, what are we actually talking about then here, practically speaking? So if those are the problems that we're trying to solve for, be it, you know, customer delivery, silos, that's probably information gaps as well. And then ultimately flow, what does it then look like? And maybe Brodie, I'll come back to you again. So from the ASB's context, or from the value streams that you've been living in, like what does that actually look like? What has been the design?
Yeah, so and I mean, probably like BMK, right? Part of it is that we are continually evolving. So the model that we've got at the moment, for instance, the area that I'm looking after, if I take part of the value stream, wealth experiences, you know, we are, as you know, and at the moment, we're probably not fully end to end. Like, if I'm honest, you know, we've got, and I'm sure it will be a familiar kind of context for many, we've got what we call business tribes, and then we have technology platforms. And at the moment, we've got probably more demand on our technology platforms than we can handle, and to have like a one-to-one perfect match. So my tribe, we have product, marketing, design, delivery, digital, and most of my wealth technology inside there. We are still reliant, and we do still have a handoff for our wealth operations, and are supported by some of our other platforms, but predominantly I've got the majority of our tech inside with me. So if I think about kind of in that center, we've got all of the things of middle office. What we also then have is still our front office. So our branches, contact centers, relationship managers that we're still interfacing with and working with, but within what we have to build and design experiences as close to everything that we need in one place. And, you know, we are looking at what else we might be able to experiment with and bring in, and what that next iteration looks like. But all of the pieces are there. We are organised though within our value stream into squads still. So again, probably for about half of you, I think that's a familiar context. So in our tribe of looking after wealth experience, we've got multiple squads, and they themselves are as close to end-to-end experience as we can get. So be that digital advice, or a specific component of kind of the tribe experience that we're building as well.
Yeah, nice one. So, and that's often how I think of it, in how you've described it. It's almost like this customer interaction layer that sits at the top, which is, you know, where your branches, your relationship managers that you mentioned. You've then got the core 80% in the middle that really is the engine behind getting stuff done, in improving those products and services. And then you've got the shared infrastructure, if I can call it that, that's then enabling, all of it. So yeah, awesome. I think that's that was a helpful visualization or articulation back for the group. And Mark, and I'm going to come to you now. So your experience in terms of then what does it then look like practically? Would you add anything to what Brodie spoke about, and maybe how to get that end-to-end working?
Yeah, no problems. No, so very, very similar to what Brodie spoke about at Bankwest, Suncorp, and also Payne Bank here in Perth, West Australia, and I'm working with as well. I guess from that practical element, what we've tried to do, and we've done quite elegantly and nicely at Suncorp in terms of preparing them for their move, is we've aligned the work breakdown structure into the value streams. And so by enabling this first piece of what's the strategy and the impact that you're trying to have at an enterprise level, what's the outcomes that the tribe or the platform needs to achieve, and then being set up to deliver the output in those constructs, is probably a material step once you've got the structural elements around your tribes and platforms, or however you're looking to set that up. And then the other key things that we've looked at is key roles and how they align and take ownership for these elements as well. So if you think about, you've got your end-to-end value stream set up, you've got your work breakdown structure aligned in your value streams. We then start to say, well, what are the key roles and what do they care about? So most organizations are using tribes. So your tribe leads, how are they thinking about the commercial value in those decisions on a quarterly basis that's going to turn the dial for the organization? You know, they work very closely with the product owner. And I look at the product owner as that commercial daily decision maker. How are we making those trade-off calls from a value perspective? And then often you find the tribe leads and the product owners are very business-centric. I look at them, what's the leadership team that you wrap around them? And it's two key roles that I look at here, but there are more elements to the leadership role. The first one then is, who's the technical conscience for the business owner? So generally they don't have that technical strength. So, you know, senior engineer and architect, but who's advising them on change and run, you know, when you've got to make those calls and balance those outcomes. And then in the other area is the delivery. You know, are we doing this compliantly? Are we doing this safely? Are we getting faster? You know, really starting to think about those the way in which we deliver. So value stream set up end to end, your work breakdown structure aligned, and then your key roles to oversee the delivery within there.
Yeah, and because you can't have a value, like you can't have an end-to-end view of the customer or view of flow unless you have the work as well as then the people together. So yeah, absolutely. And then so BMK, in the context of platforms and this, and I think there was a question even in the chat here around, you know, how do we fit platforms in the value stream? Should they be outside? Kind of what are the considerations there?
Yeah, I think let's just first of all get a big picture of what happens in a technology in an enterprise organization. So what happens, the technology team keep provisioning silo systems, right? For example, the business come and ask that they need to do, probably Brody, I'll also pick up the banking example. They want to do a risk and intelligence tool, then they will introduce a new tool in the bank, and they want to do a mortgage thing and credit decisioning and then customer financial. So what happens is actually the technology team is often delivering these kind of siloed projects, which is contributing to certain areas in the business and capabilities that we have. But what happens is actually then we have a disconnected organization. By the way, one system is going fast, another system is actually slowing down. That comes to your technical architecture, the team, how you've organized. And often I call a term called TBD. And probably folks in the call, you might be familiar with the TDD, which is test-driven development. A TBD is actually a ticket-based development, where if you want anything to be done by other team, you create a ticket for them, actually. So your entire organization becomes actually a ticket culture, and somebody, you need to raise a ticket and they will do when they have time and they prioritize and do. So it means like you're blocked for doing this. But turning that into a value stream, what happens is actually you are aligning your technology to the business capabilities and functions where the customer is realizing the value faster, you know, or they can get the value sooner. So the technical architecture and the team composition, it really matters. It really matters because cross-functional team notion is not actually new now, because we have since last 10, 15 years, we're talking about this cross-functional teams, right? But the question is that whether the cross-functional teams are truly independent of doing something of their own. Fact is not exactly, because what happens is that we have dependency on platform teams, we have dependency on security, we have dependency on legal, for example, Brody touched upon, you know, because sometimes you need to update your website with some terms, you need to go through the legal department to sign off the content before even you publish something on your mobile banking or internet banking, right? So it means then this becomes actually a silo of functions in the organization. What is happening is that everybody then loses the sight of the customer. And internally, we become focused on our process excellence and documentation, the artifacts, the governance that we need to do. And then what happens, what it's supposed to take maybe 3 months or 4 months, it takes altogether a year or two to deliver that value to the customer. So big programs comes, big project comes. What value stream is helping us to do is shift the project mentality to a product mentality. Shift from having a short-lived teams to a long-lived teams notion. And make this team responsible for we build it, we run it kind of a mentality. You know, what sometimes we call like you build it, you run it notion, right? With the inclusiveness, we say that we build it and we run it. So those are some of the benefits. So your technical architecture matters, your platform, to answer the question about the platform, one of the book that I often refer is actually the Team Topologies book, which goes really nicely with our BVSH book and also with the Team Topologies. Team Topologies book talks about platform team as a separate thing. So it means the team starts providing internal services to the team which are building some capabilities. For example, your mobile banking team or e-commerce site team, retail team like that you might have. So that team and your platform team become loosely coupled. They have services, self-service themselves, rather than asking somebody to do something for them. Those are some of the constructs which you can explore. Same with your architecture as well. Sometimes if your application is too big, it takes too long to make some change and deploy to change it. And also I've seen organizations where releasing to production is actually a festival. In a sense, you need to coordinate around 60, 70 people in an organization who is responsible for various elements and various components. You need to move away from that if you want to be nimble and if you want to be delivering value in this current scenario where we are today.
Which means I think BMK, what you're talking about there is your tech maturity in terms of being able to not make it a big festival with 50 to 60 people requires a certain level of capability, maturity, tech tooling, and enablement basically to help with that. So along with so I guess along the journey to be able to organize your people in a way so that we're customer focused, to then structure the work like Mark was talking about, that's then prioritized based on that. We then also need to have a journey where we're then increasing our tech maturity so that then the platforms and the teams can then help with that flow, and so that we can actually then have better time to value, I think is what you're saying. Yep. Great. And so then if we then think about from a platform point of view, I guess to connect it back to what Brody was saying as well, it's how can we get as many of those platforms embedded into the value streams as much as possible, and then keep the ones that are truly shared. And that then helps, I think, as well. And I think, Mark, you were calling out that from a role perspective, a business person needs to have a tech friend, because in order to ask a business person to also do the tech architecture or to work out the how it's too big of an ask. So let's make sure that we're pairing people at the right levels along the way over the value stream.
Hey, Marie, I've got a slight build, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
To the platform. So one of the things that I learned this probably about 4 years ago, working with an amazing general manager who just understood this platform space quite well. And when you're thinking about your tribes and your platforms, he described it as the layer cake model to me. And if you can imagine, and what we set up at Bankwest and reviewed at a few organizations is, you can imagine your cake is 3 layers. And at the bottom is your enterprise enabling platforms, that are set up in a way that just enable the entire organization. Next level up is what we refer to as your enabling platforms. So if you think your bottom layer is more your infrastructure, platforms as they're set up, you've got your enabling platforms, which may be data and those kind of things, which are more business centric, but not as far away from the customer as they should be. And then the next level up was business platforms. And the decision at the business platform layer, we then broke into what we refer to as systems of experience. Let's let them live in the tribes. So that they can iterate at speed on the systems of experience. And then if you're not iterating on the experience at speed, then it became a platform. And to BMK's point, how does it become a consumption service? So, and the reason why I called it the layer cake is the tribes become the candles on the cake. And it becomes a nice little visual that execs and stuff can start to understand of how the operating model comes together. So just a little bit of a build there on how to bring it together.
Yeah, awesome. I love that cake analogy. And it sounds like we're going to all eat the cake. We're going to have our cake and eat it too. So that sounds good. So now that we're getting a feel for, what does it mean to be in a value stream? What are some of the key kind of design consideration? Why don't we get into, well, what does it mean then to work day to day in a value stream? So how does it feel? And maybe let's unpack it in this order, and I think this is in the order of priority: culture, strategy, and structure. So if we think of how does it feel to work day to day in a value stream, what does that then mean for our culture? So my first question to you guys is going to be, what kind of behavior do we need to then have, or what do we need to be exhibiting in the value stream, and maybe what change might we need to then have from traditional, if 50% of our audience is in functional silos still, what change might we then need to have from a behavior perspective to truly unlock the value stream? And Brodie, I see you popped yourself on mute, so I'm going to go to you first.
Yeah.
So from a behavior perspective, what do you think?
I think maybe in picking up on kind of Mark's point, what I call, like, in a typical organization, you would have called my leadership team. I call my support squad. And that group of people are very much empowered decision makers around the business, and kind of, I like the concept of kind of my conscience, my tech conscience. So, you know, I think from a cultural perspective, it's about everyone having a voice and everyone like playing in position, bringing what they can to the table to make it better. Because if somebody sits there and says that they're the tribe lead and they know the answers, like, we're all doing it wrong. So I've got a risk lead, a design lead, a delivery lead, a tech lead, you know, and everyone's got a piece of information that somebody else at the table doesn't have. So the culture, I guess, becomes quite flat, very enabling of everybody else. So, you know, you can talk about servant leadership and it kind of comes and goes, but it's really a sense of like, what can I do? What can I clear? How can I help? And so culturally as an organization, you know, we've made a massive shift, implementing kind of mindsets to sit alongside our values. So there'll be familiar concepts, you know, customer obsession, pace over perfection, learn it all over know it all, empowerment and trust, you know, but how those come to life when, you know, you've got squad members, you know, DEAs doing all sorts of things. Like, I couldn't get on the tools and do that, you know, so you've got to give people space to do the work that they need to do. And I think culturally that's a big shift from kind of a traditional hierarchy where the person at the top knows the answers and directs the flow of work down, to actually connecting together to figure out and co-design the right way to do it, or to give your product owners the space to kind of make and control their own decisions and their own backlog and how they get it done as well.
Yeah, there were so many things in that, from shifting from, you know, traditional mindset of information is power to information is knowledge that everyone has, to a leader being a coach. So how can I help being the key thing? There was still so much goodness in what you've just said there, Brodie. Mark,
yeah, and I think for us, culture was a big piece. I was just going to say, like, for us, that cultural piece, like, I could see some of the people talking about leadership alignment and things like that in the pre-survey. I wouldn't underestimate the cultural shift for people, particularly as you go on that journey from what they know and are familiar with to a really different and new way of working. But yeah.
And so, Mark, I'll ask you a different question. What in your, because Brodie's covered a lot of behavior change there, so unless you had other ones. So my question to you is, what do you think has been the hardest behavior change, or that you've either experienced yourself or seen from others?
Yeah, Brodie touched on a few of them, but if I just link the behavioral change to an outcome first, and then we'll kind of work backwards from it. One of the things that we saw in Bankwest, probably, I think it might have been 12 months after the launch, because if you can imagine, there's an old way of doing things that everyone is very much used to, and then there's a new way of doing things, and there's a change curve that you've got to navigate, you know, to transition from the, I don't like saying the old, but the previous to the new. Once we came out of that change curve and we did the cultural surveys and assessments, the results were world-class from a colleague engagement perspective, from where they were previous into the model. And that wasn't just compared across banking industries, that was like all industries all over the world, world class. So we knew we had done something right. And when you start to double click into it, behaviorally, to Brodie's point, leaders realize really quickly they don't have all the answers in this new way of doing things, and they have to actually let go and step in and hand over that control that often has made them successful in the past by having all the answers and knowing all the things. So that vulnerability piece is really, really important. But the other big shift from a leader perspective was then their role became about unblocking the squad or the tribe or the value stream. And you can't underestimate how powerful that is. If something, if the squad's screaming out for help and you in your capacity as a leader has the ability to influence that outcome, and while as immaterial as it might seem, that has a huge cultural impact all the way through your tribe. So just a really brief example on this one. When we were launching the Tribes at Bankwest, we couldn't get approval to put poster notes on the wall in the new building because it was a new building. And the CIO just took that task, like the CIO, the guy at the very top. He made a few phone calls, and before you know it, we could put poster notes on the wall. And he thought, it was a 5-minute task for him. The joy that created in Bankwest to be able to put poster notes on the wall was just phenomenal. So that I focus a little bit on leaders here, but it's that behavioral shift of being vulnerable, blocking the team, stepping in, and just letting go of that control that you're currently used to.
Yeah, awesome. I love that vulnerability piece. And maybe that's just because I'm a huge Brene Brown fan. But I was with a leadership team last week at their offsite, and it was a whole lot of talk of vulnerability and radical candor. So I think we could use a whole lot more of that. So nice one. And BMK, from your perspective on culture shifts, maybe within a tech context or from a team, what would you call out as something that you've seen work really well? So if Mark touched on what's been hard, what would you say that's worked well?
I have to concur with Mark on one thing. Like Mark was talking about how putting a post-it notes on the new building wall. And I've seen like a 2 minutes job of adding something in a hyperlink page in a tech organization could take 6 months, right? Because you need to have multiple layers of permission and approval to come. It's a matter of adding one hyperlink in one page, because what happens, that is actually clear evidence that how an organization is set up. Now, from a culture point of view, what John says that like Peter Drucker's quote, the culture eats strategy for breakfast, and John extended that to further saying culture eats anything and everything for breakfast, lunch, and dinner and supper and everything, right? So I think if the whole idea of value stream is actually how do you bring the decision making within the autonomous team in a value stream perspective? Because if the team is often, however they are talented, if the culture is not encouraged in an organization where to make certain decisions by themselves, because what I've seen is sometimes you have autonomous teams, but they don't have empowerment to do certain things. They have to wait for architecture to do, give some approvals, a risk to sign off something, and security to tick some boxes, compliance team to do something for them. Now, you need to have certain autonomous capability and then true way of enabling the teams to do the right thing for the organization. I think that's what the value stream is teaching us. The other thing from a culture is also in the both the ways, right? Not from the leadership perspective. Let me talk from the developer and technology perspective from my side, where every developer, every person needs to understand how their work is connected to the outcome that the organization is working towards. If they can connect to that, and you will find the purpose, you will find the joy, you will find the focus, and the flow will automatically be there. But if the developer thinks that my job is only to upgrade a Jenkins server and I don't know why, or I don't know what else will happen by doing that, and you become really focused on only what you're doing, but you are missing that point, what actually the organization is trying to achieve, with that. I think that is a big change from a developer community and our teams, the technology teams, the squads or tribes, however we are calling. Like, it's not just from leadership. It has to come both the ways, right? The team have to do. I think value stream is actually a nice construct where the leadership team shows the commitment, because we wanted to enable the flow, improve the flow. And the team who are part of that value stream construct also understand that, okay, I know the vision and product and roadmap and strategy my organization needs to go to, and this is my OKR. This is this is the strategy that we're working towards. I think having the team, not so much of a, there is no hard and fast tool of saying like, you need to follow this particular framework, you need to do certain things like that. So the teams can choose how they want to position. I often take actually the sports field analogy, right? Because before you go to a game, you decide who is your opponent and what is doing, what is their strength and weakness, etc. You study and you pick a team based on that. And the team, once they go to the ground, and they have a completely autonomous decision-making capability, and they can position themselves to score or defend. And that is what actually the culture that you need to have for the teams to deliver that. But for each and every time, whether I can move a chair, I will tell you, this is a real example. I was talking to one of my friends, and he joined as an engineering manager for an organization. He said that there was a whiteboard behind him, and he moved the whiteboard close to the team where they were sitting. So by the way, the team can use it. But one of the senior member of the organization, he moved the whiteboard again to the same position where it was. And he said that to move the whiteboard, you need to have a permission to do that. So for each and everything like this, if you're waiting for an approval and permission, it's going to further slow you down. And value stream is about enabling flow and improving flow. So that's the shift that you need to have.
Yep. So yeah, absolutely, BMK. So if anything, it's then let's push down as many of the decision rights as possible to the people that actually have the information and or who need to be able to do things as you're saying. And you also touched on kind of OKRs and work. So let's go there maybe next, because I think and Mark, I'm going to throw to you, because we've talked about kind of behavior change and, leadership. What does it mean from the team in terms of to make it real day to day? What does the work need to be doing? How do we need to be thinking about that differently? Because there is this disconnect I see in a lot of different organizations between they've got a strategy and it can be a corporate one across the enterprise, but it is not aligned to what the teams are doing. So how might we close that? When you think about a value stream, what are we actually doing in there?
Yeah, no, great question. And this is tied to what I was referring to as around the work breakdown structure in the value stream. Mm-hmm. And if I use the Suncorp example, while I won't go into the specifics of it, what we've actually done with the work breakdown structure is actually driven that from ELT at the top all the way through to the squad. And so, and what that's actually, why that's really important from Suncorp's perspective, but not only in this model, is it's going to create what they're referring to as aligned autonomy. So therefore, the story that the squad is working on can be traced all the way back up to the overall impact that the ELT members trying to have at the top. And so what we've done there is we've looked at the organization. While you do have your value streams that are built as end-to-end as possible, we've then tried to wrap ELT over the top of it. You've got the right EGM level and tribe leadership that's guiding the organization to pick up an element of the work breakdown structure. And then the squads that are then within the tribes are then synced within the quarterly cadence to make sure that those stories, epics, and initiatives are always aligned at the top. And then the bit that we've brought it all together with then is the quarterly cadence. So every quarter now, and we're starting to mobilize this, it's actually, we're going to be undertaking the quarterly business review, which will actually be driven by ELT at the top. They'll set the direction for the quarter. They'll talk about what's worked well, what hasn't, what pivots and adjustment we need to make. The tribes will then set their commercial priorities, and the squads can then plan and execute against it. So really, really important, creating that alignment from the top to the squad so that everything is always in sync and delivering to the value that we need.
So we've got a question from Stephen. I don't know, Stephen, did you want to pop yourself off mute to ask it? I just saw it pop through around the work breakdown structure.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering, Marco, on yours, like you were saying with the work breakdown structure, does it go to having full P&L sort of reporting for the value stream?
Yes, it should do. It depends on your organisation's maturity and readiness for it. So, for example, at Bankwest, when we started, we didn't do the P&L because we wanted to teach the organisation how to deliver differently in this new way of working. But when we did the next iteration of the design of the model, we brought P&L alignment into it. Suncorp, we're taking a slightly different approach where at the value stream at the top, it'll be P&L aligned, and then the tribes will be set up as the delivery constructs underneath it. So it's really what's right for the organisation and when they're ready to do those things.
Thanks.
Brodie, did you have anything to add on that? I see you're nodding. Is there anything different or the same that you wanted to comment on that one?
Yeah, and maybe I can see Martin's got a conversation around kind of when you kick off under that new OKR or kind of structure. So align with what Mark was saying. It does take a couple of goes. So we have an adaptive strategy process. We run it every year. And it's probably taken us 3 full rounds of that to start to connect our corporate strategy scorecard really beautifully in terms of flow through to tribes. And this is, I think, the best iteration we've had so far in terms of that. You can see the golden thread between everything, and that gives people real purpose and power. So we use, and there's lots of different software options. I'm sure many of you guys will be familiar. We use a Microsoft suite, but you're able to ladder your epics, your stories, your user tasks, and then we can actually export and report on all of the tribe work and how that flows into the corporate strategy scorecards, what measures and benefits we're tracking against commercial and customer outcomes, and it's really a balance of those two. So when we kick off new work, it's always connected to those OKRs. And then we also have kind of a really, I think, quite a slick delivery framework that we use with kind of 6 gates and controls. And the first one that we kick off is really your lean canvas. And that starts to map out who needs to be involved. And again, they come to the tribe. Feels very egocentrical. You come to me. But, you know, we've got a cadence that people are familiar with. And so they're coming to those kickoff meetings, they're participating in them, they're being informed and are able to engage. And so those are kind of some of the key places that discussion becomes really two-way as well between the teams about the work we're doing. Is it the right stuff? Is it impactful enough? What help do we need? So yeah, probably very, very similar.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Brodie. Because I can say that I have worked with organizations as well as experienced where you just focus in on the value stream constructs or the operating model, the structure and the roles. And when you don't focus in on the work, it's a whole lot of chaos. And you perpetuate that lack of alignment between the strategy, the leadership teams, and the teams. And it's actually quite hard to bust once you've got some momentum. So starting off with a focus on the people and the work together makes for a bit of secret sauce. So yeah, thanks for answering those questions. And I think we might, I'm just going to pause there for a minute. Stephen, are there any other questions in the chat that we haven't answered or that have come through before we move into how do we get started? If we've understood kind of what this all is, how do we get started?
Yeah, there was one that just sort of popped in at the start where, because obviously a lot of what we're talking about is banking and financial services and how this was, how value streams are across other industries, people's experience of working, how well it's happening.
Go for
I
it.
can quickly touch
Oops, yeah, Mark,
Yeah.
go for it, Mark. So.
Yeah, the examples I were covering off were finance industry, but working with Suncorp at the moment, it's not within their finance arm. It's actually in their insurance arm at the moment. So their group designs more insurance, and again, it relates across industries from what I've seen at the moment. And working with another organisation at the moment, where again it can align. Sorry, VMK.
Yeah, I mean, I think the value stream construct is actually a generalized construct. It doesn't mean that, like, it's because it comes from a lean manufacturing background. What current Martin talks about in her book is actually right. If there is a product and there is a value stream, And if there's a customer that you're serving, and there is a value stream, right? Like, so whether it's an internal or external. So if you look at from that kind of a notion, yes, there is a value stream for a long-lived product that you're delivering or a service that you're delivering in your space. I would like to also touch on a couple of things, being a technical person in this space. I think there are questions about architecture, some platforms and all being asked. I think once you have value stream, it's also important that what kind of a technical architecture that you're going to choose and what you're going to do with that is also matters. And also matters the tools that you're using in your SDLC lifecycle. For example, I've already talked about Azure DevOps, and people have different tool sets. So you need to understand that how do you bring those kind of things to improve the flow in your organization, right? Because sometimes what happens is that you might need to go to a centralized team to do something for you, and they are busy in doing certain things, and you're waiting for two things. And I've seen people complaining about security takes 2 months to sign up something on our high-level design, and then to who's losing money, who's losing revenue. And the other concept that Mark touched upon is actually where I think the concept about the value stream having its own P&L. A lot of organizations, they are also switching into this kind of a model where you give the entire responsibility, like treating them as a mini CEO for that head of tech and head of area. So they own completely the revenue, the cost, the improvement, the efficiency, the product. I think Amazon also has the same kind of a structure internally, because what happens is actually it's completely decentralized and they own their own destiny. I think your organizational design, your application or your system technical architecture, and also your tools and practices, they all work together. Just having a value stream, but not having a right tool or capability is not going to help you. So it means it has to blend everything together to enable the flow.
Sounds good. So that sounds like a hot tip for how we might get, or when you're thinking about getting started, the scope or all the things that you might need to then think about. I might just answer the question really quickly around other industries as well. Oil and gas, energy, government. So there is answers. I'm realizing this is a financial services heavy panel. That was not with deliberate intent by any means, but more just to show the art of the possible. So yes, it is possible. Just to answer that one quickly. All right, so we've got 5 minutes and maybe just some food for thought, team, in terms of what might you then do to get started, or how you might get started. So BMK's already touched on making sure that we've got the right technical capabilities, the tooling in line with that, the tech roadmap and whatnot. What else might you throw in? And I'm not going to call on anyone specifically. Feel free to jump in.
Quick one from me. If there's appetite within the organization, we did what in Banquest before we did the whole scale change, we did an incubator of what we were trying to do. And so if there's a project or a program where you can get the buy-in and support at the sponsorship level to set it up as more of a value stream and execute in this model, that's always a really good outcome because it can demonstrate in a smaller scale. And one of the ways to get around it if you have challenges with your finance department or PMO is tell them that you'll still govern the business case traditionally. So take it through the stage gates, but you can set up the program to operate agile, kind of end-to-end in the value stream concept. And I've done that a couple of times and have got it over the line. So yeah, you can win PMO and finance over by just approaching the governance right as a starting point.
Yeah, awesome. And I see Brody nodding. Go ahead, BMK.
Yeah, I'd like to add one thing which is very close to my heart in the space of value stream and flow is that you need to have the right metrics in place to measure the flow in the value stream. Because what happens is that if you keep changing your metrics as the way how you're measuring is going to differ, then you will not get consistency, because value stream is all about continuous learning and continuous feedback and continuous improvement, because you're always striving to improve the flow. It is not a destination. By creating a value stream team, the leadership team can't say that, okay, it's all done, dusted, and all good to go. No, because you need to be working along with that team to improve the efficiency. So one of the concepts that I'm really liked and close to my heart is that flow metrics by Dr. Mick Kristen on the project to product. When I see that the concepts like flow metrics the BVSH, and also the team topologies, they all blend nicely together, what you need to do. So metrics from perspective, you need to be measuring not just actually the time to deploy, but you need to be measuring from idea to operate. And that is more important. So the flow metrics is actually the key thing, when you're talking about value stream.
Yeah, good one, BMK, because I think I wouldn't underestimate the amount of effort that it takes to, first of all, understand what metrics do you need, what data do you have, and then how do you capture that? So that's actually a big one to think about upfront. And I've also experienced the woes of a ways of working transformation that didn't have any metrics for about 1.5 years, 2 years long. So, and it's actually quite hard to then work out if you're on the right track or not. So I think, yeah, that's a great call out. And Brodie, what one, from your perspective, how might you start?
Yeah, I think in a similar way to Mark, we ran a pioneer tribe, was the first kind of start. So pick a project and see what you can make happen. I'd echo what BMK was saying. A big thing is around how do you show it was working? Because actually, I don't think anyone measures today. And so when you go down the track, 18 months later and you've delivered all this amazing value for customers, it's really hard to say it is better, sooner, safer than it was before if there wasn't a current state. So I think give it a go. I can see there's a question around internal, external vendors. We do a lot of work with external partners. So our insurance arm, we work with AIA and IAG, and we have experimented with having them in the squads. So they're part of the team, they're part of our remote team. It's all one kind of set of handovers. And we've also had them as partnerships that sit outside. So I think see what works, experiment, and don't be afraid to know that day 1, day 100, day 1000 will be different. So what you start with, if that's what you go into year 2 with, I think you've missed a trick of being able to improve something along the way.
Because you're never done improving. I like it. That is the perfect note to wrap on, because we've just hit the top end of the hour. So just before we close, I've got 2 things to tell you all. The first is I hope you've enjoyed our free-flowing panel conversation. We've got our next Pacific meetup scheduled in September in 1 month's time, as well as for the rest of the calendar year. So please do sign up. Would love to see you. September is all about the nationwide building society and their ways of working journey. It is a treat not to be missed, I can guarantee you. And the second thing I have to tell you is that you will get a Zoom post survey with 3 very short questions. What did you learn? What was the second one? Did you like the format? And our standard NPS question. So we are all as a community into fast feedback and continuous improvement as well to practice what we preach. So I hope everyone enjoyed the time today. This will be available afterwards. And I will say thank you very much to Mark, BMK, and Brodie, and for all of you for your time. And that is it from us. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. That was great. Thanks.